So welcome to the Cemoh Fractional CMO Marketing Podcast. There's lots of words there, and I've just thrown them all in randomly. This is a new one, and I've scared everybody who's on this broadcast about 10 minutes ago by saying I'm going to go do something completely different than what we'd originally planned to do. It isn't actually totally different, but my name is Simon Dell. I'm the CEO of Cemoh. I have with me Kristy, Kelly, and Joshua. Kristy and Kelly are both in Brisbane. Joshua is in Sydney. If you want to find out more about them, and I stress, definitely go and find out more about them because they're all super interesting and wonderful people. All their notes and their links and their emails and everything, all that will be in the notes for the show. But suffice to say, they've all been in the marketing industry for quite a while, and they all know a lot about marketing. Now, the premise of these group ones is that we are going to have a discussion about one thing in particular. And that thing is a statement that I am about to make that I am hoping they all have some opinions on. Probably Kelly won't be first because Kelly's quietly panicking in the background there.
Try papers. Let's be prepared.
Yeah, if Kelly's screen goes blank, we know she's just like passed out and collapsed at the side of the chair.
Quite possibly.
So that's fine. But the statement I'm going to make is that reporting, doing detailed. Here you go. As you can see, I've practiced this. Doing detailed and in-depth reporting on marketing for clients is a waste of time because they never bloody read it. That is my statement, and I'm interested. I can see Kristy sitting there going, I want to agree with that. She goes,
I just want to know what the argument is. I
think there's two parts of this question. Number one, is that the case? And number two is, if it is the case, what's the solution? Kristy, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think it is important. I think it's in how it's presented.
Okay, right.
And I think you've got a good relationship with the business owner or the CEO or whoever you're reporting to, that you're aligned on the business goals and the marketing goals.
Right.
That's the starting point. And so how I get in there and get things kind of kicked off is, setting KPIs that you agree on, firstly. So I don't want to talk too much. I'm sure other people have other things to say, but
no, that's fine. Well, let's just go through everyone and see what their initial conversation is, because their initial opinion is, because I've got some questions on that, right?
Yeah.
So, Josh, what do you reckon? Is it a waste of time? What's the solution?
It's both. It is absolutely critical and an absolute waste of time unless you are directing it to the CFO in the CFO's language and communication and need state concisely. You still need to put all that data together and get an overall understanding, but presenting it to everyone as everything. I've never lost more time in trying to get people to understand what they don't care about. Even the bits that they do need to know about, the amount of unopened things that I've seen, 30-page documents. A dashboard that is suited for that person, that team, that department, excellent. We review that. Let's not waste an hour me reading the things off a PowerPoint that you can see as well, because you're also in the same room looking at the same PowerPoint. Yeah.
Okay, Kelly, sweaty palms. What's sweaty palms?
Right. I actually agree with both Kristy and Josh. So for me, what I like to do generally with clients is have just snapshot reporting every month, which doesn't go into a lot of detail, but I really like to go into a lot of detail on the metrics that matter to the business most, but in 90-day snapshots. And that's just so that there is enough data to actually make some real actionable insights, I suppose, into what's working, what's not, what do we need to change. So that's generally how I like to do it. But it definitely needs to be broken down into a language that they understand, and also on a video call or in person, so the questions can be asked and answered. Yeah.
So what are they look? So what numbers are you reporting? Like we're all in marketing. We've all worked with different industries and different clients and things like that. What do you think are the, if you was asked, just give us five numbers, what would you be looking at?
So for me, the main things are from the analytics, it's sort of broken down into a few different things. So if you're looking at it from the analytics side of it, so I'd definitely be really honing in on those conversions, and that conversion tracking is really important. So really identifying what those true conversions or events on a website for a business is. So I'm not talking about page visits. I'm not talking about clicks on buttons. I'm talking about, bookings. I'm talking about phone calls that actually terminate to a phone call, sort of that
Okay.
lasts over 30 seconds. So that's the side of it that I'd look from an analytics point of view. And then I'd be drawing that back and really having a look at the, customer acquisition costs, the return on marketing investment, and all of those sorts of pieces of data points which really matter to the business.
Okay. Josh?
All right. Look, I absolutely agree with Kelly on there. I think that you get into that conversation where it's the return on marketing investment and the relationship between that data that you get back, so that you could put that together. But I think that my biggest question in that area there is how that is viewed. Again, that marketing investment becomes the relationship between those values is confused. And again, we're back to language, who we're speaking to and why we're speaking about that. So the specificity of that data, but the actual real hard conversion tracking data and the relationship between the real hard spend, regardless of what you call it.
Okay. I'm going to assume Kristy's going to agree with that, right?
Mhm.
But so my next question is, there's so much that we do with the two-part question here. There's so much that we do with marketing that is intangible. So, brand advertising, brand marketing, right? So much of that can be quite intangible. You can't sit there and draw a straight line from saying doing this to achieving that, right? So that's one thing. And then the second thing, you've got this challenge of attribution is, as well as I do, if you answer the phone to someone and say, hey, where did you find out about us? They say, oh, your website. And you're like, that gives you no help whatsoever and no insights whatsoever. So in a world or in an industry that we're dealing with so many ambiguous things, how do you kind of present that as as value to the client? Kristy?
Hmm.
There we go. There we go. Now I've got you all, and that was my intention.
Yeah.
Lull you into
Yeah.
a full sense of security with easy
Yeah.
questions to start with.
It's things that I talk about with my clients all of the time. I think that, the clients that I work with understand that there's a bit of ambiguity there. So I'm tracking the attribution of marketing activities, and I'm showing what I can track and go, right, you've gotten a lead, you've got a sale from this particular activity. But you're right. I'm working closely with sales teams as well and going, hey, can you ask that question that you just asked? How did you hear about us? And let's report on that. And so it's changing some business practices there. If the business is willing to do that. There's some businesses just go, we're too busy for that. Yep. But there are some of my clients currently, a particular CEO that I'm thinking of, he wants to know that data. He's very data focused. So he's all up for me trying to, help the sales teams or the customer service teams ask those questions and get that reporting happening.
Josh, the ambiguity of some of what we do, how do you really add value? How do you present that value? How do you show that value?
Well, I mean, when you talk about an ROMI, you've got, say you've got a 5-to-1 and you're presenting that with what your data is. It's a good benchmark. Say it's 10-to-1. Say it's exceptional. And then you're still just talking about numbers and what value are you placing against, say that campaign finishes and you're going 60% up again, just on the brand equity that is occurring from various other campaigns, whether they are successful or not, and you're attributing that data to that campaign or that value. You really need to do, you've got those data dashboards, but a balance between that and a brand equity scorecard showing that, yes, we are doing these things like short whip meetings and campaigns. We're doing one of those a month, or we're doing one of those per week, depending on the stage of the business. But we're also looking at 90 days, and that can be 6 months in a brand cycle. It can be 12 months in that brand cycle. We're still doing that campaign for the brand as well. Both have attributions, and one of them doesn't have a number that, whether you ask for the number and you like numbers or not, is going to give you anything that what you want. We just need to know that we're working on that and that it is evolving.
Kelly?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. But I also like to add, like, there's some other things that I like to look at sort of in the background. And what I like to do is really create those GA4 reports in the back end so we can look at that funnel exploration. So going from, landing page to perhaps product page, and whether that actually results in a form submission or a booking. The other things are looking at path explorations, so that, the user's path right the way through to conversion. And then also using things like Microsoft Clarity, which is awesome and free, with amazing dashboards where we can really have a look at how users are, interacting with the website, and whether those tweaks from an SEO point of view are really paying off. So, are we reducing the number of rage clicks we're having? Everybody hates those rage clicks. Right the way to how far are they scrolling down the page? Do we need to, reduce the banner size? Where are the drop-offs occurring? So if we can show improvements in that and that kind of visual data, that's pretty awesome too.
I'm gonna. This is probably a little bit more out of your comfort zone, Kelly, because I think one of my first loves in marketing has been beer and alcohol, and I've worked with a number of beer and alcohol brands in the past. It's one of those ones where it's so hard to show what marketing dollars do, because there is simply no there's no straight line from anything you do, almost anything you do, to the point when you start seeing volumes of beer increasing, or sales of beer increasing. And the other challenge I think you have with something like beer or any FMCG good is that it's passing through so many people's hands before it gets to the actual consumer at the end. Kelly, and this is not a criticism, Kelly, but you might be looking at someone that's running an advertising campaign online. They're going to a website and they're making a purchase. That's really a nice, to a degree, it's a nice, simple, linear, step by step. Whereas beer, you're sitting there going, well, it's got to go out through a distributor, and then it's got to be sold in, and then it depends which shelf it goes into in the bottle shop, or whether it's on tap in a pub, and that's even before we've worried about whether the right clients are walking into the pub to actually buy the product or the bottle shop. There's so many challenges around a product like that you sit there and go, at the end of the month, what fucking 5 numbers am I going to show the boss? Because you're just drawing on personally, I think a lot of random numbers in order to go. All they want to see is how much beer they've sold. So how do you solve challenges like that, where it's such a complex sales process or such a complex distribution process? Josh, throw that one at you.
Well, that's something I would have thrown at our friend Josh Gaudry.
Yeah, that would have been a yes. Yeah,
I think you put it under the auspice of from cheers to beers. How do we find data between the marketing and the sales? There isn't. That's where the dark arts becomes part of it. That's where the science meets the art, and it's knowing what those levers do. You might be pulling them behind the velvet curtain, but you know that they do have those effects in that environment on those products, and these are the outcomes that do occur. It might not be a linear path, and it might be a manufacturer an unusual path, depending on what your beer product is, or your actual just your booze product. But you know what happens underneath that curtain, but it's not something that you can demonstrate. You can say what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, but it doesn't translate into a live dashboard between dollars in and dollars out.
Yeah. Kristy?
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with that. It's complex.
Yeah.
and that's why I'm not in that space.
No. And again, I completely understand that. But, and I guess my thought is, with all the brains, the brains trust of you three and me, here is that if someone's listening to this and someone's going, yeah, I do have that problem, I'm trying to draw a line from one to the other, is that, you know, if you're thrown that sort of curveball, what do what can you do? I think for me, sorry, go on.
Specifically, I'd ask whether they're a Scotch brand or not. An excellent Scotch brand.
There you go. But I think for me, one of the questions would be, which I don't think we've discussed here, is we've talked about KPIs and reporting and things like that, but potentially for me, it's the length of that report. It's about what's the lag time between, hey, we did this and we expect to see a result in 6 months' time, or we because again, from a beer perspective, and that's the challenge, is some of these things you have to predict the results from a manufacturing perspective. So you have to go back to the company and say, hey, you need to brew this amount of beer, or you need to make this amount of widgets, because the marketing department are going to do this, and then we think that's going to sell that. So there's all these complex moving parts here. But I think sometimes you have to go, we've got to stop looking at this month by month and start looking at it quarterly or even 6 months, and go, let's judge our figures on that rather than the month. And I think that's a real challenge to have conversation to have with clients.
And I think it also comes down to what the objective of the campaign is. So I've worked with some clients who are absolutely at capacity, but they really want to make sure they don't get into this feast and famine kind of situation. So they just really, really are about that brand awareness and keeping in touch with their audience. Whereas then you have other campaigns where the objective is conversions. And so that's kind of where that different discussion happens. Click costs increase when you're looking at conversion campaigns, but the output is, instead of traffic, you're actually getting those conversions that you're wanting to build on the business. So I think it does come down to the objective of the client as well.
Yeah. Josh?
I became a Scrum Master and Agile manager purely from listening to people talk the wrong language, the same words to each other, from tech, building a SaaS product. And then when you provide that data, you've got then an exponential on the wrong communication and what you're trying to do. So I think that there is definitely, the data needs to be provided. It needs to be provided to the right people, in the right language or the right mode of communication, which they understand, want, and can utilize. The next part about in a fractional CMO role definitely is you are running that campaign, you've created that, you're implementing that, you're doing that, you're demonstrating the data, that it goes back to the client, and the client says, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to do this. And it's like, oh, hang on a second, this is going to blow the whole thing out of the water. We need to talk about how that fits into you selling beers, because I know that you really want to sell beers, but this idea is not amazing, and it doesn't have anything to do with everything else that we are working on that won't reflect in this data, but will reflect in brand value and sales in 2, 3, 6 months.
Yeah, I use this example because I've faced that challenge, recently, and the conversation that I'd had with the client is, hey, we want to create a national beer, and I'm like, in Australia, that itself is a massive challenge because you've got such regional compartmentalization when it comes to breweries and beers and brands and all that kind of stuff. And I'd sort of said, well, what we need to do is build this goodwill we need to start at the other end and build this goodwill from the consumer, so that when they walk into the pubs, they're looking for a particular product, or when they see a rack of products on a shelf or a tap, they're looking for a particular one. The client kind of had the opposite idea to start with, which was like, oh, let's go and get some taps, let's get some distribution, let's not worry too much about the marketing. And I kind of felt that was the wrong thing to do. I think there was a bit of push and pull from both sides of things, but inevitably, I'm almost quite glad we never sort of went any further with it, because I was like, it's one of those ones where I felt I could have possibly spent a year investing in brand building activity and consumer building activity, and even if I had done, there was no guarantee that the consumer would walk in and actually ask for the product. It felt like it's there was such a challenge there that I was almost glad I didn't go any further with it. So look, I understand that's a very challenging one, but I sort of want to go back right to that sort of initial question, is that we've all had those clients where you're showing them the numbers, but there seems to be they're not necessarily feigning interest, but or maybe they are feigning interest, but really all they're just interested in is how many times the phone's rung or how many products they're sold. How do you get them really engaged in that? Or as I said right at the start, is it just a waste of time? And let's let them just look at the top line numbers and let that be the end of it.
I think it's both. I think you show them, like, you have to have those top line numbers. You absolutely must, to get their buy-in and for them to feel like you're listening to them, and you're also working towards the commercial outcomes that they're after. But then also equally important to show how marketing is actually contributing to that, because the moment you don't have that buy-in from top level, that's when marketing budgets get cut. And that's, when things can really start going south. So really, really important that we balance that. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Yeah. Kristy?
Yeah. I think that it just has to be that level of education, there's so many leaders out there that are not qualified marketers. And so it's our job to educate them on what is important and what are the numbers that they should be looking at.
Yeah.
And then, once they understand it, it's, as I said earlier, it's sitting down and agreeing on, what are those numbers that they want to be seeing on a regular basis, and making sure that they can see improvement and optimization along that journey.
Yeah. Josh?
I absolutely agree. It is about there will be a person that has a certain focus on a few key numbers, and they'll understand them or know the relationship between what they do in those numbers. But if you can use, as Kristy said, that education process, these are the other numbers in that ecosystem that create that number. This is what happens when you adjust this, when you do that. Kelly, when you were you doing talking about the GA4, I did enormous reports that no one, it's like, but these are instrumental. These give you that one number that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Or how this works is an explanation of how this is occurring and what we're doing to get that. So it's as much education of the ecosystem of numbers to give you the one number, means that you can't just disregard the other numbers, but at least know them. You don't have to ask for them again when we meet. We can meet after lunch again if you want to ask the numbers again, but know why those numbers are there.
Two final questions then. I think everyone has mentioned, or at least Josh definitely mentioned the word dashboard. How are you presenting this? And this is probably a tactical thing. How are you presenting those numbers? Are you just going, hey, here is a single piece of paper, bang, here's 5 numbers? Or are you actually showing them the full report with a cover page with perhaps, the key things on there? What's your preference when doing that, Kristy?
Yeah, look, I've got my own way to present data. Depends on what the client needs. So it's a little bit different every client. But I present it usually on a PowerPoint presentation in a monthly meeting with management for one. But we also have Looker Studio. So again, it's that dashboard where we've got that set up just for the data that they want to see.
Yeah. And Kelly?
Yeah, I also use a reporting dashboard where I have 2 sets of reports. So normally I'll have the sort of the 30-day snapshot, and I'll have the 90-day full report with all the, the key points and annotations. And it also allows me to add any additional pieces of information, which I might not be able to pull from digital channels. So That's how I like to present it. And then also it allows them to toggle on and off sort of their date ranges as well. For things like the 30-day snapshot, they can look at any period of time. So I find that is normally quite good, but it does still require me taking them through it every 90 days. It is quite complex marketing, and we can't expect them to go through one report meeting and then fully get it. It takes years. Yeah.
Josh?
Again, I think it's client specific. I have one that wants to see it in the driest single block PowerPoint presentation, one key value, one key value, one key value, and with little underneath, slightly, reduced opacity, what it was last month. I have other clients that want to see it real time with their login on their dashboard on their phone to show what that data is and what's streaming out of Look, or what's coming out of GF4. What that's going, but that specifically, again, the one or two numbers they want. If you overwhelm them, or provide them with too much, they take on nothing, and then usually come back to you with their own numbers, and it's like, well, that's not it.
So I think that the learning out of this is that, as a CMO, as a fractional CMO, getting your head around the capacity to produce a dashboard or understanding those numbers is an absolutely key part of the job. We can't be we can't be approaching everything with this sort of creative ideas and big ideas. We need to sort of there needs to be a lot of understanding behind the numbers, and I think that's probably something that good CMOs understand. I think bad CMOs shun away from the numbers. They all want to pick up big ideas and campaigns and where we're going to spend the money and all this kind of thing. I think there needs to be a lot more awareness of the numbers, which leads me to the last question, which is a very leading question, is then when you are presenting to the leadership team, who is the most important person to get buy-in from in that room?
Depends on the business. Depends on the business. If it's a larger organization with a finance team, they need to be involved. If it's a slightly less sophisticated business, then it's the CEO. My sometimes is, like the head of sales as well.
My question is, do we all need to cozy up to the CFO? Is that really?
Yeah. But you should be building relationships with everyone on the C-suite, so.
Yeah.
Josh,
and actually the CEO as well. I think just and the director of growth is another huge one. That's their job, to ensure growth for the business. So you absolutely have to be in alignment and have buy-in with them.
Yeah. I think there's too many battles done in boardrooms between CMOs and CFOs, because it's, everyone sits there and CFOs trying to save money and CMOs trying to spend the money. So I think it's really important to try and build that bridge. What's your opinion on that, Josh?
The times where you sit down and there's you on one side of the table and the 10 of them, I think the longer that you, again, excellent mentor advice that I've received, the longer that you're quiet, the faster the key people will identify themselves as to who needs to be addressed and what it is they need to be addressed with. They will present who is who in the zoo, and it may not be under the title that they're there, and especially like Kelly says, that brand growth person will not want, but they want to adopt you. They want to literally leverage you into their own campaigns that they have created that don't fit with anything else. So you can have a relationship with them, but it just needs to be aligned with the person, again, on the other side of the table, who's making the actual decision. So getting that balance, I think, is, again, we're back to dark arts. You've got to do it for a long time, and you've got to read the room, and you've got to see what's going on, and you need to know what tools and weapons you can pull out of your bag to get those jobs done for that particular business.
Yeah, I think we often forget that a lot of CEOs used to be CFOs. That seems to be quite.
They'll tell you. It's like CrossFit.
They will tell you, yeah, they will, yeah. Yeah, that's like that people do CrossFit. They'll tell you that they do CrossFit. That's
They'll
fine.
also tell you how much marketing knowledge they have too.
Yeah.
Well, I've got
All
a
that they're-
confession. I am both a marketer and a CrossFitter, so you
There
busted
you
me.
go, Kelly. There you go. I see CrossFitters that are doing MBAs. That's the ones you can they just never keep quiet. They're just like, all right, yeah, we get it. You're doing an MBA and you're into CrossFit. Are you not doing an MBA as well, Kelly? Are you?
I actually did consider it a year ago, but
Okay.
yeah.
There you go. Then you can
So
just
there
talk
you go.
about.
I'm the one you're talking about.
I'm doing mine now. And I've not even mentioned
Gosh,
it
you've
once.
not told us about it. Oh, that seems
I've
unusual
not
for
told you
anyone
about it.
doing
But
an
are you
MBA.
doing CrossFit?
No. I do vegan CrossFit. It's a very special. You probably would be able to
If
do
you've
it.
seen Josh drinking beer, he's not doing CrossFit. Look, last comments on this. Just reporting in general. Any sort of last moments of comments of wisdom for anybody out there that's stepping into a CMO role or feels that they could be doing their fractional CMO role better. What's your final tips, Kristy, when it comes to reporting?
I just think obviously align those goals firstly, with the business goals, and just set some KPIs up and get some kind of agreement there firstly, and then use some really basic tools. If you haven't been in that space before of looking at the analytics and tracking and reporting, I would just start really simple and then just you can evolve over time.
Yeah, Kelly.
So probably two things for me is just to absolutely make sure that the technical setup for all the tracking on website is accurate, because it can be so complex, and you can end up with sort of multiple conversions reporting when you've only had one. So it can really throw data. So just really making sure that that's all perfect and tested. The other thing was about, I suppose, when you walk in, sometimes you do feel like you're on the other side of the table, but I always like to try to get on their side of the table, sit with them and just let them understand that, hey, we're all working towards the same goal. And I think once that alignment happens, that trust is there, then it's less of a battle. Yeah.
Awesome. Josh, final words from you?
I think that you need to absolutely understand deeply and intensely all of this and very clearly and concisely deliver this.
Yeah.
And when they ask where that comes from, know that entire ecosystem, how that works, what that does, why that is, what happens when you pull that lever, when you twist that dial, it does that to that number, which affects knock-on, cause and effect, causality, and how those things tie together. And that's where your dollar went, and that's how it's coming back 5x, 10x.
Okay. Well, look, my final point would be there's a very famous statistical thing that was done. It was in a book I read, and I really should go back and find out which book it was in, about bookies at race courses, and asked how much data they wanted in order to be able to predict the next winning horse. And it's a very long story, but the short answer, the short version of it is that the more the data doesn't necessarily mean the better the prediction or the better the decision. What they found was that most bookies managed to make a fairly decent guess at which horses were going to win just by 5 data points. And they kept giving them more and more, 10, 20 more data points, but the guesses didn't get any better. And I think to that, my final point would be, I think most businesses could be run on the success of just following and analyzing 5 data points. I don't think they need, reams and reams of data and numbers and things like that. But the big challenge is which 5 data points that you look at. And I think that's the trick of, being a fractional CMO. And that's the trick of when it comes to success, is knowing which numbers are the levers that you can pull, and the ones that the ones that are important for the business. So, look, thank you very much for that, Kelly. That wasn't so bad, was it?
And look, I think I warmed up to it, Simon. But next, I think maybe
next time I'm going to have a much more contentious point for us all to argue, Kelly. So because I think that was a nice easy one to start you off with. So
thanks, Simon.
Next time it's going to get much more argumentative and
let's go controversial.
Go really controversial next time. So if anyone is listening or anyone here has some idea about some controversial marketing topics, maybe we'll talk about. It's a bit late now, but Jaguar rebrands and things like that. That's the sort of thing we want to get. We want to get in and have a good argument about. So, but thank you all for that. I think there is absolutely some super important things that you guys have said today, some suggestions, some tips, and I think they're all very, very helpful. So really appreciate that, putting you on the spot and delivering that for us today. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. See
Brilliant.
ya.
See you
Thank you.
later.